Hi everybody. In preparation for the midterm exam, this mini lecture is gonna deal with some aspects of the exam and the material that it's going to cover. So the exam is going to be taken online. And there is a window in which the exam is open at. And it is opening at midnight on March 25th. And the exam is going to close down at 11:59 p.m. on March 26th. You can access the exam on Blackboard, enter our class, and then go to the Exams tab from the left-hand menu. Once you are in the Exams tab, all you have to do is to click on the midterm exams and then read the instructions. I cannot stress this more. Please do read the instructions before entering the exam. Okay? Now, as you can see, there is a window of 48 hours for you to take the exam in. However, within this window, March 25th to March 26th, you need to find a period of time of about 90 minutes. Some of you will find it that they can do it much quicker, but about 90 minutes, in which you can sit down, start the exam, and complete and submit it in one sitting. Okay? You cannot start the exam and then leave it and come back after 3 hours, etc. You need to find one period of up to 90 minutes and sit down, begin the exam, and complete it. Once you press the button that says begin, you must complete and submit the exam. You will not be allowed to re-enter the exam once you are leaving it out. And so you can't just peek in, see what questions are there, and then come back later and do it. None of that is possible. Once you hit begin, the clock runs. You have 90 minutes to complete the exam, and you can only take the exam one time. If you try to retake it, it will tell you that you already have completed it and therefore cannot take it again. When you are taking the exam, as you go throughout the questions, you need to save your answers regularly and often. And also, I highly encourage you to keep a record of what answer you gave in each question. There are 23 questions on the exam, and those are a mix of multiple choice, true and false, and multiple answer questions. As you are taking the exam, if you have any issues or questions, if something happened and you need my assistance, contact me as soon as possible. Within those 2 days, I'll be attuned to my emails and make sure that I follow up on everything that comes up. Obviously, if you took the exam at 2 a.m., which is your choice, I will not be there to assist you as I'm usually sleeping at that time. But in most regular hours, you could get an answer for your questions relatively quickly. If you don't get me by email, you can also use the remind.com system to send me a direct message there. The exam, I assume, is open books and open notes. However, if you so far have not really been completing the reading or did not really review the material, you should do that before you start the exam. The open book might help you if you forgot something, but this is not the time to start and study everything from the start. You probably will not have enough time to do that. So what material are we talking about? We are covering all the material from the beginning of the semester until right now. So everything we covered. Your readings, the videos, my mini lectures, articles, websites, all of those things are fair game to be included in the exam. Some specific things that you should pay attention to were our initial discussions about power, authority, legitimacy, and the relationship between power, authority, and legitimacy, or the differences between them. Sovereignty and the state, or the nation state, right? What makes a country a sovereign country? What does a country needs to, or what does a territory or a nation needs to have in order to be considered a state? And I mean a nation state or a country in this context. We discussed the different ideologies, political ideologies, what we call the isms. If you remember, liberalism, conservatism, socialism, fascism, right? All of those different ones, communism. You need to know some general ideas about each one of those. If I see fascism in action, how do I know that I'm looking at it, for example, right? Or what would be the main argument or the main goal of socialism if it gets into government? We talked a lot about democracy, and you are expected to know what democracy is, what is the difference between direct democracy and a republic, how do we make decisions in each one of those. You need to know about how the process of governance in a republic is specifically and intentionally slow, to make sure that there's time for deliberation and consideration of everything, and how direct democracy seems to be a bit more impulsive or quicker to make decisions. You need to know the difference between a liberal democracy and an illiberal democracy. What makes a country to be considered a liberal democracy, for example? What are some examples of countries that are illiberal democracies? And you need to know, how do we measure democracy? If you remember, we talked about Freedom House, freedomhouse.org, and how they measure democracy. Next, we talked about things like constitutions and checks and balances and the separation of power. So here, try to understand what a constitution is, how do those checks and balances work, how do they impact the structure and operation of government, and the same for the separation of power. Other things that will be included in the exam, we had a discussion about populism and how it works, and how can we identify a populist leader. So I expect you to know that. We talked about other types of government, such as constitutional monarchies and absolute monarchies. So again, when you see those types of governments, can you tell me, or can you identify, what are the differences and similarities between them? Most recently, we talked about parties and interest groups. What are the goals of each one of them? So you also just very freshly have dealt with that through assignment number 2. So you should know and remember those. Maybe some examples of parties and interest groups, right? And we also talked, and you read about elections and voter turnout. We had this discussion in our Zoom sessions about how do you increase voter voter turnout, for example, right? Things like increasing the feeling that people can impact the elections, or just holding the election on a non-work day, either a weekend or a national holiday, right? So those simple things that can increase people's participation in the political process. And in all of our discussions about political ideologies and parties and interest groups and checks and balances and elections and turnout and all of those things, we always come back to discuss how all that works in the United States. And so this would be your application part. This week, both on Monday and Wednesday in our Zoom meetings, we'll have more reviews and go through a bit more preparation to the exam. So I hope you will participate and review those sessions. But at any point, if you have any questions, of course, just make sure to email me and let me know what help I can give you. So this is it about the upcoming exam, and I will see you in our Zoom sessions.